Kyle Shanahan went, on KNVR and said Lance is going to get he's going to get the nod. He's going to go for the full first half, and I guess Darnold and maybe Marcus Allen. I mean, not Marcus Allen. Brandon Allen.
Uh-huh. Whoa, Marcus Allen.
Oh, Marcus Allen coming out of retirement. Wow.
Yeah.
Round of applause.
Yeah.
Oh, God. No. What was I going to say? Lance is going to get the first half, and I think that this will be very telling on what their plans for him are. Well, at least this can go one of several ways. Like the reason why he's getting the whole first half could be one of many reasons. Reason number one could be that they are trying to trade him. They might be looking at his trade value right now. Mike Silver said that the Niners wouldn't get more than a 5th round pick for Lance as it currently stands.
Mm.
If Lance goes out there and shows something against the Raiders, his trade value is going to go up because there's going to be a team out there that might see something in him, and they might say, you know what, we might be able to get a franchise guy for cheaper who's been learning from the great Kyle Shanahan, right? And they just have Purdy, so they don't need Lance anymore. It's the NFL. It's just the way it works. Right? So they could be trying to trade him. I hope that's not the case. But in a way, if they did trade him, I would be still rooting for this kid. I think he's incredibly gifted. I think he's a good kid. I love the way that he conducts himself, in press conferences with the media. There's a lot to love about Trey Lance.
Mm.
Another possibility as to why they're giving him the first half is because Kyle just had this planned all along, right? Like Purdy's not going to get the opportunity in at least week 1 of the preseason. I don't think he's going to play at all in the preseason, and he should play a little bit.
Maybe he should the 3rd game, hopefully.
Maybe. It's going to be scary though, because if somebody hits that arm, is it going to set him back?
Well, that goes all the way back to our topic about the Chiefs earlier, but continue.
So, but the thing is, the Chiefs aren't dealing with like an elbow surgery,
Yeah, but I mean, Purdy wasn't when he got hit by the Eagles defensive end, So if that happens to Mahomes, season's over,
Mm-hmm.
Continue. So, anyways.
Okay. I think my point is that Purdy already had, he has this pre-existing injury. You know what I mean? Mahomes getting injured, it would have to take the injury occurring.
Yeah.
But, I think this could have been Shanahan's plan all along in terms of, all right, Lance is going to get the reps, the whole first half on the first game. Darnold's going to get it on the second game, and maybe they split in the third.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a drive, and then he gets a drive, and then he gets a drive. Like this is a competition between the two.
Yeah.
I think that is the most likely scenario.
Yes.
Right? The scenario that I hope that it is, I really hope it's Kyle Shanahan saying, this kid needs to play football. Remember, I told you last week, I was like, I want Lance to I want him to play. If he has no shot to start week 1, which it doesn't look like, he better be in for a significant amount of time.
Yeah. No, I remember.
And
I was shocked because I was like, well, if he balls out, I would want him to get pulled because I'm like, I don't want him to get hurt. And you were like, but
if he struggles, you keep him in there.
Yeah, yes. And also just he needs the snaps. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, I mean, he needs the live game speed. He's got to get used to it. And the only way he's going to get used to it is playing. So if it's not going to happen during the regular season, he better be getting those reps during the preseason. And thank God I have been waiting for Trey Lance to play football for a very, very, very long time.
There is a lot of there's a lot of fun to be had with this game. Um, and them, Shanahan announcing this, I was like, oh wow, that's huge for the Niners,
Mm-hmm.
specifically for Trey Lance, because I've been saying, and I alluded to it earlier, this is the offseason for him to prove it, I think, because if he, every practice Shanahan just kind of scoffs and it's like, I don't like it. I don't like what I see. And then eventually it leads them to trading him. That's unfortunate, because it does feel like he has not gotten the opportunity to prove himself. And I mean, last offseason he was the starter, so he didn't get that many snaps because it was like, well, we don't want him to play the whole fucking preseason. And then the year before that, he got the finger injury. I think that was week 2 of the preseason.
Week
And
3.
before that, okay, well, I don't know how much he was throwing, but I know I remember that was when he
I
got
think it was
drafted.
week 3.
It was either 2 or 3, but I do remember him getting like a nice long touchdown pass against the Packers, I want to say, in the preseason.
Yes.
Yeah, and that game was like really good, and then
It
he
was
played
against the
like no
Chiefs.
more.
It was
Oh,
the
the
Chiefs.
Chiefs, yeah.
And
He
then
played like
last preseason it was against the Packers. Like he fucking did it again. Like
yeah, but he
I
would play like no more than 2 drives because he'd play so good, and then it was like, oh, let's pull him out, and then he proceeds to get injured last season and yada yada. Right? It feels like he hasn't gotten that much playing time. So hearing that he's going to play an entire half is like, that's big. That is big for him.
It's big because it's the biggest. I mean, it's the clearest way that you can simulate what the offense would look like if you're using him in a game. And
Yeah,
it,
and
it
then
will
my
be the
my
most play time that he's got since he played in the monsoon.
yeah,
And honestly,
and
do we even? All right, people will be quick to hold the monsoon against Lance, but like it's is
I know what
that
you're
a
trying to
real
say.
measure? Is that a real
Yeah,
measure of like NFL football? You know what I mean? Those games are different.
here's
Like it's a
here's my
different
thing.
it's a different sport almost.
Right, it's like
It's like
it's
more
almost
old
like
school, like
rugby.
running the you're just running the ball. You can hardly throw the football.
Yeah. So here's my thing with Lance. I've said a lot of pro Lance things, I'd say, tonight. Um, but you also know that I have some, like, I wouldn't call it anti Lance opinions. It's more of like I can see where Shanahan doesn't see it in him and hasn't seen it in him, and that affects his decision. Whoa, dis-
Decision.
decision to go with Purdy over him because of Purdy's experience in succeeding with this team. But mhm,
Now, let's just say that what you're saying is true and Shanahan hasn't seen something in him. What is your confidence that Shanahan would make the right decision based on what he sees?
well, I personally think that Shanahan is an excellent mind in the NFL, and I think that this is a win now team. So when he sees a quarterback succeed on the field, it's hard for him to take him off the field, you know? And that's kind of where my point was going with Lance is like, although I agree with the sentiment that, he hasn't had the full opportunities yet. And, he needs to get more opportunities. And him playing the preseason this year is like huge to me to judge him because we keep hearing about him only getting like 7 fucking attempts in practice a day or something like that. It's like, how do you gauge that, Um, but at the same time, my issue with Lance is like he sure has, and mostly in regards to the monsoon and then the injury, he sure has had the perfect storm, literally, as far as excuses, to for like say fans to be like, well, we haven't seen it yet. The only person that has seen it is Shanahan, to me. He sees it on the practice field. He knows how well or not so well Lance can receive and learn and adapt and put forth the playbook, if that makes sense. I said that horribly, but how well he commands the offense, right? We don't know because we only saw him in a game and a half last season. We haven't seen him since, right? Shanahan sees him at practice. He sees him in the quarterback meeting rooms. How smart is he? I don't know. Bear in mind, the rawest prospect we've seen in years. Another reason why he's got the perfect storm of excuses, as a prospect to fail, and I'm not saying he's prone to failing or anything like that. I'm just saying it's hard to gauge him when he doesn't get any time. And that's where all of this goes towards, is like Shanahan needs to give him time to prove himself. And
That's what I was going to get to.
That's your issue too. But for me, it's like, I can't say that that Lance is good because I haven't seen it. So until I see what he can do, personally, I trust that Shanahan's probably making the right decision. Now, again, I think part of that decision is that this is a win now team. So if Shanahan feels that Purdy is the better quarterback when it comes to leading the offense, I understand that. I think that I agree. I definitely agree that Lance has the most potential, but when is that potential going to, be brought forth? How long is it going to take for him to develop? He keeps getting hindered. He keeps getting brought back by injuries and all that, and that sucks. But, every year it feels like there's an excuse. And the first year it was, oh, well, Jimmy's still here and he has the command of the offense. We're going to have sub packages for Trey Lance. And then year two, it's the monsoon game and then injury. This year, well, it's Purdy, right? So the only way that Trey Lance can prove himself is right now, this Sunday, the following week, and the following week in the preseason, getting the most snaps he will get this entire training camp. Because, again, every day he's getting no more than like 12 pass attempts. I don't get it. It's like in a first half, he should get at least hopefully 15. So we'll see.
So I agree with the logic of going with Purdy. Like, I see it. It's pretty clear. You have seen this guy perform well in your offense. Like, I see that. And I understand the logic of you don't know what you're going to get out of Lance, and you have to go with which guy is better. I'm just not so confident that Shanahan knows which guy is better.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Because Lance hasn't had the opportunity to fully prove it 100%.
Yeah, all right, let's just say Lance was showing at practice that he was better. I don't think Shanahan maybe he could, and maybe he will, but I'm not confident in his ability to evaluate quarterbacks just based on the names that he has passed on. The players that I listed earlier, the Patrick Mahomes, the Deshaun Watsons, the Lamar Jacksons, the Tom Brady's. And his plan A was Kirk Cousins. Like, Kirk Cousins is about as good as you can get for mediocre quarterbacks, right? Or as bad as you can get for good quarterbacks.
Right. Yeah.
You get what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do.
So that's the guy that he wanted. Right?
Right. But this is a guy that he coached, he had experience with him.
Yeah. So do you want the best player, or do you want the guy, that's just going to run your system? And to me, the best players typically always prevail over the system.
Yeah, that's usually my experience as well. I think there are coaches that have specific systems that have been very successful, and I think Shanahan is one of them, and I think with Brady, McDaniels is another one of them, and I think that they have a type, and I'm assuming Shanahan's thinking when drafting Trey Lance was, Well, and bear in mind, he also drafted, I want to say, Robert Griffin III, and then eventually he got injured, and then it turned to Kirk Cousins with the Redskins at the time. Um, I think maybe the thought process was, well, Lance has all the tools, obviously. He's just raw. We need to teach him. But man, if we could turn him into the guy that we want to lead the offense, plus he has that dual threat with he can run outside of the pocket. He could scramble and take it 10 yards for a first down. That's massive, and that's all you need. But I think I understand, and I do think that there is concern, and rightfully so, with the quarterbacks that he's passed, and honestly, his tenure with the Niners. Jimmy G is the most successful quarterback that Shanahan has had, and that's not exactly saying much, from a quarterback standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, and again, this is all through lack of experience and playtime and so on and so forth. Does Kyle Shanahan trust Trey Lance? I think right now the answer is no.
I
And for
agree. The
you and
answer is
I,
no right now.
yeah, and for you and I, the reason might be different, but that's the question I want to know is why. Is it because, well, there are some potential reasons, and I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So.
One thing I will say is, yeah, it's pretty obvious. If the Niners were to start Lance this season, they're probably not going to win the Super Bowl. And
Unless he gets hot and comes on, you never know.
Yeah, unless he develops into that player that they drafted him to be. But the only way that will happen is if he goes through some growing pains.
Or just if he plays.
So all right. I say they probably would not win the Super Bowl is because I just don't think it's very likely, right? I just heard some some weird outside. It's God telling me don't say what the fuck you're gonna say. Honestly, Brock Purdy coming off a UCL injury, Mr. Irrelevant from last year. If I had to bet money, I don't think the 49ers are going to win a Super Bowl this upcoming season with him at the helm. And I don't think that for Sam Darnold either. I don't see a scenario where any of these three quarterbacks are going to win. Not with the way they've been performing at camp, and not with Brock Purdy coming off that UCL injury and teams figuring him out more. Because that's the big thing. You can start off super hot, and then defenses will catch up to you. Right?
Mm.
I didn't see a lot of great defenses that Purdy went against. Right? The best defenses that Purdy faced were the Cowboys and the Eagles. One knocked him out of the game, and the other, it was a close game. Right? And I like Purdy, but coming off a UCL injury, and I also had my doubts about whether or not we were seeing was a product of playing bad defenses. I just had my questions.
Yeah. Like you said earlier, like have does it take time for a defense to figure out a quarterback?
No, it does. It does.
Yeah.
But what separates the, like franchise quarterbacks from guys that only last for like about, 2 years or so, or sometimes even just a couple games, is the ability to adjust, And so one thing I noticed about Purdy when he would play, he would roll out to the left, and throw an off-schedule pass, right? It looked a lot like the way Russell Wilson kind of looked in the beginning in Seattle.
Mm.
And Russell Wilson was able to adjust, and he had a great team around him, great defense, and they won a Super Bowl. That's my hope that Brock could do. But if you're telling me that this kid just got elbow surgery on top of the fact that he was physically limited to begin with, I think the limitations are going to start to show this year, and I just am not confident that they're going to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
With any of the guys that they trot out there. And a lot of that has to do with I just don't have a lot of faith in Kyle Shanahan's ability to either develop a quarterback or evaluate one.
Your point there about like uncertainty with Purdy this year. I was talking a lot about uncertainty with Lance, but yes, there's a lot of uncertainty right now with Purdy as well, which the topic that we're talking about is Trey Lance starting against for the first half against the Raiders. And the question that's been brought up recently by people like Mike Silver and others is that like a week or two ago it was like the hot topic was, is Trey Lance going to get traded? Because it felt like suddenly the fourth string guy was like getting almost more snaps than him, and like Sam Darnold's clearly the word was like Sam Darnold's clearly passed up Trey Lance, right? And I still want to read the tweets that I was talking about earlier because it's gonna kind of match up to what I'm saying. I think that the whole point to this season with the quarterback room for Shanahan was, I want capable quarterbacks on the roster, at least 3 of them, to be able to go out there and start and win, with this great team that we've assembled, because Josh Johnson was not able to do that. So in my opinion, trading Trey Lance this season does not make sense. And also, again, the uncertainty and the lack of experience and, the lack of seeing him on the field. It's like, why would you trade him when you put all that investment in him? And then, you're
not going to get shit for him.
You're going to get a 4th round pick for him. Is that really worth it to you? Losing a quarterback that could possibly go out there and not only win games for you, but develop into a great
franchise guy.
Yeah. And just, what you went through last season in the NFC Championship, it's like, no, that's not worth it at all. It doesn't make sense. The other aspect is this tweet that I want to read. This is from Jesse at JNAY.
Jesse Naylor. Oh, he's great. He's great.
Okay. _ LSS.
Yeah.
JNAY. Yeah.
So check out his channel. He's got a great YouTube channel. Jesse's a great dude.
Okay. So he says, Raiders reporter on with at Eric _ Crocker.
Yep.
In quotations. When Sam Darnold was back there, he didn't look comfortable and would pat the ball, not knowing where to go with the ball. End quotations. In quotations. When Trey was back there, he just looked a lot more comfortable than Sam and knew where to go with it. This is at joint practices against the Raiders, against a different defense than they've been seeing all offseason. And then it was quote tweeted by Jesse. He also said, in quotations, Jimmy looked like the veteran version of Brock. They operate the same throws. And then the next thing he says is, I really didn't think Lance was anything, but seeing him throw in person, the ball shoots off his hands. He looks like the next big thing. I didn't expect that. He changed my mind.
And I've told you, I felt the same way about Lance. And, I'll continue to bring it up. Before Lance was drafted, when they were doing the scouting combine and everything, I saw a video of Lance's pro day, and I sort of looked at all the quarterbacks, and I was least impressed with Lance. I don't know.
Again, raw.
For whatever reason, I just felt like he was raw, and I was like, I think the order I had it in, and it's not a perfect order by today's standards because a lot of shit has happened, but I had Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, and then Trey Lance. But seeing the way that Lance conducts himself and hearing more about the kid, and, I fell in love with sort of everything about his game and about how he takes everything so seriously and how professional he is, right? At least the way he conducts himself. I don't know how he is personally. It could be completely different. But, um, he definitely proved me wrong. I saw him throw in person, and I sort of felt the same way. Seeing him side by side by Jimmy, like, Jimmy didn't look bad, but Lance also looked, good. And the way that Lance was able to throw the ball so effortlessly down the field, it's exciting.
Mm.
And I had this conversation with my friend Mohammed last night while playing Fortnite, and so he doesn't really watch football much, but I sort of compared Trey Lance to Steph Curry, and that might sound like a really stupid comparison, like, because Steph Curry is like one of the greatest athletes of all time, one of the
But
best basketball players of all time.
maybe you're
But
saying like when he first started, or
well,
just in
yeah,
general.
when he first started, because Steph Curry struggled to stay on the basketball court with it. He had ankle injuries
Yep.
and really struggled. And the
He was
Warriors,
one. He was one more ankle injury away from being known as the guy that was injury prone and probably not making it.
yes, but the tool, the explosion was there, and there were questions about whether or not Steph Curry could just be a point guard who just shot the deep ball.
Mm.
And then the Warriors had Monte Ellis, an established veteran already who had won playoff games, Jimmy Garoppolo, right?
Mm.
And then also Steph Curry came from Davidson, a smaller school, not
Yeah.
like a big time school. Trey Lance came from North Dakota State, an FCS school,
Mm.
right? Not one of the big time college football schools.
Right.
And I think Steph Curry was also turned down from bigger schools. Lance was turned down from bigger schools.
Mm.
And I get the same vibe from both guys, and their careers could go. I mean, Steph Curry's career is like his legacy cemented,
Yeah.
but and Lance could end up being the biggest bust in history. We don't know, but the vibe that I get from the kid and the similarities, the parallels are just so so similar. You know what I mean? And everybody, I mean, not everybody, but most of the fan base loved Jimmy, and this is the guy that they were going to replace him with. Our friend Tyler still to this day does not like the Warriors because they got rid of Monte in favor of Steph.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
So just kind of looking at those two, it gives me sort of like more patience into like, let me wait before I write this dude off, because I have faith. Like, I just have faith that he has the work ethic that he will get to where he wants to be if he wants to be there.
Yeah. But man, it would be nice if he got there now, because the Niners roster is loaded and ready to go win a championship.
And that's Kyle's fault. That's not Trey's fault. It's not just Kyle's fault. It's John Lynch's fault too. It's Adam Peters' fault too. Everybody, it's Jed York's fault. Jed York had to fucking approve of this, right? This is his team. And we'll talk about him later, maybe in another episode.
Yeah.
But
that's interesting you say some of that, because like we've talked about it before. It's like, why did they have to spend so much draft capital to go get him, and he ends up being what he's been so far, and when you could have just, I think, stood pat and took Micah Parsons.
Yeah, and you probably win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You definitely, Micah Parsons in that NFC Championship game that they lost to the Rams could have been a huge difference.
Well, imagine him paired with fucking Bosa.
With Bosa.
They were both ranked top 10 players in the NFL period this year.
Yep.
By their peers, so yeah.
Yeah. They could have stood there. They could have taken Mac Jones there. If you
Yeah.
wanted to get the cheap rookie contract, player,
Who probably
just
fits Shanahan's scheme better,
yeah, like
according
and
to Shanahan.
apparently, reportedly the Niners were interested at Mac Jones at 3. Well, guess what? You didn't have to go up to 3 to get him. You could have stayed where the fuck you were, could have got him. And let's just say, all right, they take Mac Jones over Micah Parsons. They can use the money that they would have saved for paying Jimmy, and they could have used that for another pass rusher like a Yannick Ngakoue or somebody.
Yeah.
I think Ngakoue was on the Raiders at the time. I don't know how much he made, but
I think it was 16.
Yeah, I mean, they probably could have afforded that. And he played well that season.
No, he was nice. When they traded him, I was shocked, but obviously it was for Chandler Jones, so not straight up or anything, but they got Rocky Sin while signing Chandler Jones, so it was like, oh, we don't need and it was a new system for the defense, which that's a whole other topic.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna reel it in, and finish up this topic, because we sort of went on a really long tangent about Lance, Purdy, and everything. And I do all right. Before I reel it in, I want to clear up something I said. I want to clear up. So I don't have faith in the 49ers to win the Super Bowl this season. I know they want to, but just there's not a lot of teams in history that have had this much uncertainty at quarterback that have won a Super Bowl. Like, this is uncertainty early on. Like, this is just not a good sign. But I do think the 49ers will get far in the playoffs. I do think Brock Purdy is still probably good enough to lead this team to a deep playoff run. I would have to see it to believe it in terms of him going out there and winning a Super Bowl. Because look at the performance that Jalen Hurts had to put up against the Chiefs just to lose.
He might have had arguably the best quarterback performance ever.
Of a Super Bowl loser ever.
Yeah, definitely of a loser. Yeah.
So you need a guy with a lot of firepower to stand up to a guy like Mahomes, to a guy like Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, in those high-powered offenses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially with the Niners defense, just allowing the Raiders to just fucking drive on them. It's gonna take something special. But like I said, I think they will go deep in the playoffs, and it will end. I predict. I could be completely wrong, so don't get after me after this, or don't get on me after this. I predict another playoff heartbreak that we're just going to keep talking about, and it's just going to be another picture on the timeline for the next couple years or whatever. Or hopefully we stop talking about it after we finally win Super Bowl number 6. But I think Purdy's a good player. I just want to say that. I just don't know if he's irreplaceable. That's all I have to say. He hasn't proved to me that he's irreplaceable.
No, I don't think he is irreplaceable. I don't think he. Wait.
And I think franchise quarterbacks are irreplaceable. That's my definition. So let me reel it in.
He's not irreplaceable. Sorry.
Trey Lance will start the first half versus the Raiders. I'm excited to see it.
I'm even excited. I'm fired up.
You want to see what the fuck he's made of?
Yeah.
I want to see too. I want to find out.
I think it's a good test for the Raiders too.
Yeah.